On the western edge of Europe, facing the Atlantic Ocean, sits a small nation with an outsized history: Portugal. Though modest in size, this country's story is vast and dramatic. Its sailors once charted new paths across the globe and built one of history's first truly global trading empires. Roman rule, Muslim conquest, the long Reconquista, the age of discovery, the fall of the monarchy, and the end of dictatorship. All of these threads weave together into the Portugal we know today. Let's trace this nation's long journey from the very beginning. Thousands of years ago, the Iberian Peninsula was home to a number of native peoples, including the Lusitanians, the Celtiberians, and various smaller tribal groups. Over time, the great trading powers of the Mediterranean were drawn to this coastline. Phoenician and Greek merchants established a string of trading posts along the shore, and Phoenician voyages extended along the Algarve coast. Later, the Carthaginians took control of parts of the peninsula, a development that eventually brought them into conflict with Rome. During the Second Punic War, Rome entered Iberia and gradually set about bringing the whole peninsula under its control. But the Lusitanians and other Indo-European peoples of Western Iberia did not surrender easily. Decades of fierce resistance followed. The brightest chapter of this resistance came under the leadership of Viriathus, who inflicted a string of humiliating defeats on Roman legions and became a nightmare for Rome's generals. His triumphs, however, did not outlive him. After his death, resistance collapsed, and Rome finally absorbed the entire peninsula into its empire. Many cities grew up under Roman rule. Some, like Lisbon, Porto, and Coimbra, developed from pre-existing Iron Age settlements, while others, such as Braga, were founded outright by the Romans. For several centuries, Iberia remained a firm and prosperous part of the Roman world. As the Roman Empire declined, various Germanic peoples moved into Iberia and carved out a series of short-lived kingdoms. Among them, the Suebi managed to establish a lasting kingdom with its capital at Braga, while most of the rest of the peninsula fell under the control of the Visigoths. The Visigoths eventually conquered the Suebi kingdom as well, bringing the whole of Iberia under their rule. They converted to Catholicism, and much of the earlier Roman social structure persisted, even though Visigothic society remained at its core a warrior culture. By the late 7th century, the Visigothic kingdom was struck by plague and famine, bringing heavy loss of life, economic collapse, and severe labor shortages. At almost the same moment, a new power was sweeping across North Africa: the Umayyad Caliphate. The Visigothic kingdom was, by this point, internally weak and politically unstable. In 711, while the newly crowned King Roderick was busy putting down a Basque rebellion, the Berber general Tariq ibn Ziyad crossed the Strait of Gibraltar with just 7,000 troops, meeting no resistance. Tariq began plundering a series of Visigothic towns. On hearing the news, Roderick gathered his forces and marched south, and the two armies met at the Battle of Guadalete, where the Visigoths suffered a crushing defeat. Over the following 6 years, nearly the entire peninsula fell under Muslim control. Some surviving Visigoths fled north and took refuge in the mountainous kingdom of Asturias, whose rugged terrain protected them and would later serve as the launching point for resistance against Muslim rule. The Muslims called their new territory Al-Andalus, and it became a thriving center of learning and science. Jews, Muslims, and Christians lived side by side there, though non-Muslims were treated as second-class subjects and required to pay a heavy tax known as the jizya. When the Umayyad dynasty was overthrown by the Abbasids, a young prince named Abd al-Rahman managed to escape and flee westward. In the city of Cordoba, he proclaimed himself an independent Umayyad emir. Over time, this emirate weakened and eventually fractured into a number of smaller independent states. Sensing this weakness, the Christian kingdoms of the north grew bolder and began a long series of campaigns. Young princes and knights from across Europe flocked to join the fight against the Moors, a struggle that came to be known as the Reconquista. It was during this period that King Alfonso VI of Leon invited a Burgundian knight named Henry to his court. Henry married Alfonso's illegitimate daughter, Teresa, and was granted the title Count of Portugal. In time, Henry's son, Afonso Henriques, quarreled with his mother, proclaimed himself Prince of Portugal, and soon after took the title of king, marking the birth of the Kingdom of Portugal. Meanwhile, a new wave of Berber invaders, the Almoravids, subdued the various Muslim emirs and founded their own dynasty, which was in turn replaced by the Almohads. Driven by long-standing hostility, successive Portuguese kings continued the fight against the Moors until the Algarve was finally conquered, securing Portuguese rule over the whole of its modern territory. Even so, Portugal still had to reckon with its far more powerful Christian neighbor, Castile, which was at the time occupied with its own conflicts. After the death of King Fernando, Portugal fell into a deep dynastic crisis. Fernando's half-brother, João of Aviz, the illegitimate son of the previous king, Pedro I, seized de facto control of Lisbon. Seeing an opportunity to press his own claim to the throne, King Juan of Castile invaded Portugal, and the two rivals met on the battlefield. One of the most important battles in Portuguese history was fought at Aljubarrota. A Portuguese army of roughly 7,000 men took up a defensive position on a ridge facing a Castilian force estimated at 20,000. In a battle that lasted barely an hour, Juan's army was utterly routed. His invading force disintegrated, and his campaign ended in complete failure. Soon after the battle, Portugal signed the Treaty of Windsor with England, forging an alliance that remains in effect to this day, making it the oldest active alliance in the world. With Portuguese independence now firmly secured, the stage was set for a new chapter, the Age of Expansion. This new chapter opened with the conquest of Ceuta, one of the most heavily fortified Islamic strongholds on the Mediterranean, which fell to Portuguese forces. Soon afterward, João's son Henrique, known to history as Prince Henry the Navigator, began sponsoring a wave of expeditions down the African coast. The Portuguese had developed a new class of small, agile ship, the caravel, fitted with triangular sails that allowed it to tack against the wind and travel far faster than earlier vessels. Riding this technology, explorer after explorer pushed the boundaries of the known world. Diogo Cao reached the mouth of the Congo River, Bartolomeo Diaz rounded the southern tip of Africa, Vasco da Gama reached India, Pedro Alvarez Cabral landed in Brazil, and Antonio de Mata reached Japan. With every voyage, the map of the world grew more complete. Shortly after Columbus's voyage to the Americas, Spain too set its sights on empire building. To settle disputes over the newly discovered lands, Spain and Portugal signed a treaty dividing the world between them. With a population of under 2 million, Portugal lacked the manpower for a territorial empire like its neighbors, so instead it built a network based on trade, establishing fortified trading posts and garrisons along the coasts it reached, and fighting repeated wars to defend them, chiefly against the Ottomans and their allies, who competed fiercely for control of the spice trade across the Indian Ocean. This empire's legacy is not without its darker chapters. It was during this era that the transatlantic slave trade began, though by some accounts on a smaller scale than under other colonial powers. Colonization also spread the Portuguese language across the globe. Today, it ranks as the 6th most widely spoken language in the world, with over 250 million speakers. The death of King Sebastian, who had died on campaign in Africa without an heir, plunged Portugal back into political crisis. Taking advantage of the succession dispute, King Philip II of Spain invaded and merged the two crowns, forming the Iberian Union. Under the first Spanish kings, Portugal retained a measure of independent identity, but under Philip IV, Portugal was reduced to a mere province of Spain, and Portuguese nobles were stripped of their positions of power. During this union, other European powers, most notably the Dutch, began seizing Portuguese colonies, capturing the spice trade and attempting to annex Brazil outright. Anger over these losses fueled the Portuguese Restoration War, led by João IV, who ultimately succeeded in winning back Portugal's independence. In the 18th century, Portugal was struck by one of the deadliest earthquakes in recorded history. Centered on Lisbon, the quake is estimated to have measured between magnitude 8.5 and 9, killing anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 people. Many survivors were forced to live in makeshift tent camps, and even the royal family shared in the hardship faced by ordinary citizens. Once the immediate chaos had passed, Queen Maria I had the Ajuda Royal Palace built on the site of the devastation. The Prime Minister of the time, Sebastião de Mello, survived the earthquake himself. Asked what should be done, he is said to have replied simply, "Bury the dead and heal the living." And he set about organizing recovery and relief efforts. During the Napoleonic Wars, Portugal refused Napoleon's demand that it cut off trade with Britain. Napoleon invaded, but with British support, Portugal held on to its independence throughout what became known as the Peninsular War. By the war's end, Portugal was left devastated and impoverished. During the conflict, the royal family had fled to Brazil, establishing their court in Rio de Janeiro. The first time a European royal court had ever been based in a colony, an event that dramatically raised the colony's infrastructure and status. The royal family returned home in 1821, and less than a year later, Brazil declared its independence. Through the 19th century, European powers scrambled to carve up Africa, pushing Portugal to expand further inland in Angola and Mozambique. In 1890, Britain issued an ultimatum demanding the withdrawal of Portuguese forces from the land linking those two colonies. Portugal had laid claim to this territory, but the claim clashed directly with British ambitions to build a railway connecting Cairo to Cape Town. The resulting diplomatic humiliation sparked widespread public protest and helped bring down the Portuguese government. In 1910, Portugal underwent one of the most fundamental transformations in its history. The monarchy was abolished, and the country became a republic. During the First World War, Portugal joined the Allies, contributing troops and supplies at the cost of some 12,000 soldiers. The political turmoil, strikes, and severe economic troubles that followed the war eventually led to a military coup in 1926. The coup ushered in a long period of right-wing dictatorship, beginning under the leadership of Antonio Oscar de Fragoso Carmona. After crushing a rebellion, Carmona was elected president, but facing economic chaos, he handed control of the nation's finances to a university professor, Antonio de Oliveira Salazar. Salazar quickly restored order to the country's finances and oversaw major infrastructure projects, including railways and power stations. But this progress came at a steep cost. Salazar maintained his grip on power through censorship and a secret police force. During the Second World War, Portugal officially remained neutral, trading with both sides of the conflict. In the post-war years, it became a founding member of NATO in 1949 and later joined the European Free Trade Association in 1960. Salazar suffered a stroke and was replaced by Marcelo Caetano. Caetano's government did not last either. He was removed from power in the Carnation Revolution, a coup carried out without a single shot being fired. Out of this revolution was born Portugal's Third Republic. And the country began its transition toward democratic government. In the same year as the revolution, Portugal's remaining colonies began breaking away one after another, and by 1999, the Portuguese Empire had come to its formal end. Around the world, Portugal left behind a deep cultural and architectural legacy. Today, with a population of over 10 million, Portugal stands as a developed nation whose economy leans heavily on tourism, drawn, in large part, to the country's remarkable and storied history. From Roman conquest to Muslim rule, from the long Reconquista to the building of a global empire, from the ruins of an earthquake to the rebirth of democracy, Portugal's history is a story of struggle and renewal, told again and again. How a small nation once redrew the map of the world remains one of history's most remarkable chapters. And that's the incredible journey of Portugal, from ancient tribes and Roman legions through the fires of conquest and revolution to the golden age of explorers who redrew the map of the world. A small nation, but a story as vast as the oceans its sailors once crossed. If you enjoyed traveling through this history with us, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and tell us which part surprised you the most. Share this video with someone who loves history as much as you do. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next incredible journey. Because next time, we're uncovering another nation's untold story. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. See you in the next video.